A story of dreams, defeat, and discovery. The year was 1871, and gold fever had swept across America like wildfire. Stories of ordinary men striking it rich in the Colorado mountains filled every newspaper, and R.U. Darby's uncle was completely caught up in the excitement. "We're going to Colorado," he announced to his family one evening, his eyes blazing with determination. "There's gold in them hills, and we're going to get our share." His nephew, young R.U. Darby, watched as his uncle sold everything: the farm, the cattle, even his grandmother's precious china, to raise money for mining equipment and the journey west. "Uncle, are you sure about this?" Darby asked as they loaded their wagon with picks, shovels, and supplies. "Son, I can feel it in my bones," his uncle replied, patting a worn geology book. "The signs are all there. We're going to strike it rich." After weeks of hard travel, they reached the Colorado mountains. His uncle had studied the land formations, the creek beds, and the rock samples. He picked a spot that looked promising and drove a stake into the ground. "This is it," he declared. "This is where we make our fortune." Day after day, they dug. The work was brutal. Their hands blistered and bled. Their backs ached from swinging pickaxes and hauling rocks. But his uncle never complained, never doubted. Then, one morning that started like any other, something magical happened. The pickaxe struck rock that sparkled in the sunlight. Gold ore. Real, honest goodness gold ore. "We did it!" his uncle shouted, dancing around like a man half his age. "We actually found gold." For several weeks, they worked that vein of ore. They shipped their first load to the smelter, and when the payment arrived, it felt like all their dreams were coming true. But then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the vein ran out. They dug deeper. Nothing. They wedged the tunnel. Still nothing. They tried new spots nearby. Empty rock. Maybe that's all there was, Darby suggested after days of fruitless digging. His uncle stared into the dark mine shaft, doubt creeping into his voice for the first time. "We've been at this for months. We've spent every penny we had." They kept trying for a few more weeks, but their enthusiasm had died. Every swing of the pickaxe felt heavier. Every cart of worthless rock felt like a reminder of their failure. Finally, his uncle threw down his tools in frustration. "That's enough," he said quietly. "We gave it our best shot. Sometimes you just have to know when you're beaten." They sold their mining equipment to a local junk dealer for practically nothing, just enough money to get back home. As their wagon rolled away from the mine, his uncle never looked back. The junk dealer, however, was no fool. He'd seen plenty of discouraged miners give up their claims, and he'd learned to be curious about what they left behind. Before scrapping the equipment, he hired a mining engineer to examine the abandoned site. The engineer spent just one day studying the mine. He measured the tunnel, examined the rock formations, and checked his calculations twice. "Well?" the junk dealer asked. The engineer smiled. "Whoever worked this mine stopped digging just 3 feet short of one of the richest veins of gold ore in Colorado. 3 feet. Just 3 more feet, and Darby's uncle would have struck a fortune." The junk dealer quietly resumed mining operations. Within days of digging those additional 3 feet, he hit a vein of gold so rich it made him a millionaire. Meanwhile, Darby and his uncle returned home, broke and defeated. But that failure planted a seed in young Darby's mind that would change his life forever. "I learned something that day," Darby would later say. "I learned that most people give up just when they're about to succeed. I promised myself I would never make that mistake again." Darby went into the life insurance business. And whenever a potential customer said no, whenever things got difficult, whenever he felt like quitting, he remembered those 3 feet of rock that had stood between his uncle and millions of dollars in gold. He became one of the most successful insurance salesmen in America, earning far more than his uncle ever could have made from that gold mine. Years later, When people asked him for the secret to his success, Darby would tell them about the mine in Colorado. "Success is usually found just on the other side of your biggest challenge," he would say. "Most people quit right before they break through. I once watched my uncle quit 3 feet from gold. I decided I would never quit 3 feet from anything again. And he never did." Sometimes the greatest treasures are found, not in what we discover, but in what we learn from what we almost gave up on.